one of the ways to ensure, let's just say, if I understood your question, let's say we ultimately have an Article 5 convention, and the delegates say, well, we've got a new approach on how to run this, let's say. I think a way to ensure, now Chris has proposed, one way to do that is to have a convention of the states just to adopt the rules, so we have that set in stone. And another way is to have each state legislative body say that if there's going to be an Article 5 convention, these are the rules our delegates will follow, which is another way to say we're on record now that what this body has done is establish the framework for an Article 5 convention, and we will support these rules and these rules only as to how it will be operated and run. So that's another way to do it. You have 26 states do that. You have a majority of the states right there that have said we're following this set here. And that's, so one of these approaches is going to be necessary to make sure that there's a set of rules that are ironclad in place. I like the resolution process because the states are on record from their legislatures as saying this is what we'll support, and this is what we'll have our delegates voting for if there's any question about how the rules, what are the rules that will govern a convention. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just going to say thank you if you were finished.
Thank you. And one of the other things are, this is going to be a key component of our Judiciary Committee. I'm an attorney. I don't think I'm a constitutional scholar, but there are folks who we're going to be able to consult and bring in and discuss, so that I know that some of the folks here are on that committee and have asked to serve. Some are lawyers, some are not, but that's part of the work that we're going to conduct here in the next several months. So go ahead.
State Representative John Wood from Florida, and I want to address the first bullet point in the flow chart, which is building awareness, credibility, and consensus among the state legislatures and our experience in Florida. Because at the end of the day, our power rests with the American people. And we have to communicate to the American people why this mission is so important. So in Florida, and just to give you a background on Florida's Constitution, the state legislature is term limited. Under our current Constitution, representatives are allowed 4 two-year terms, and then senators are 2 four-year terms. So in anticipation of that, we are going to continually have new people involved as elected representatives of the sovereign state of Florida. So what we've done in the Florida House is we've actually formed an Article 5 working group. We have elected co-chairs. I'm one of the co-chairs. Representative Metz is the other co-chair. We have anticipation of, since we have sort of classes in the Florida House from the incoming freshmen, you know, it's kind of, you can see because of the terms that the seniors are typically the speakers and the leadership. So we have adopted in the Florida House a formal structure of within this working group, and this is totally voluntary. We have, I think, 21 members of a 120-member body have signed up for it. But I think it's so important that what we're doing here and starting out today needs to be communicated and needs to be transparent. You know, in Florida, we have a great tradition of government in the sunshine. And I know that that's one of the issues that we are going to be discussing in our deliberations on how we conduct the business of what is before us. But I'm glad to see the press here. I'm glad that this is an open meeting to the public, where people can participate. And I think it's so important that as we go forward, we focus on building awareness, credibility, and consensus among the state legislatures and among the American people. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bruce Williamson, one of the delegates from the state of Georgia, and I just sort of a point of order. I'm going back to, I believe, Senator Long. The whole idea of step 2 is continuing into hopefully the final convention of the states call for the purpose of Article 5. You mentioned the number 26 states. Is that, my question is simply, how many states, we have about 33 states represented here today. So at step 2, will there be a minimum number of states to take us to the next level? I'm just simple math.
That's a great question. That's actually one of the items that the Rules Committee is going to be talking about.
Good enough.
Because the question is, parliamentary law says majority, so 26 states technically. But because we're looking at this from an Article 5 standpoint, do we want to say, okay, let's go by parliamentary law and just say 26 states show up at this thing and we can adopt the rules for the body stand? And they would.
And they would be continuing.
They would be if we have a continuity clause. But the other thing we could look at and discuss is say, well, there's a 2/3 and a 3/4 threshold in Article 5. Do we want to kind of mirror it and say, maybe we should have these rules adopted by 34 states? We can define that and say, this is what we think needs to happen. So that's something that has to be discussed, debated, and again, it's the Constitution essentially, so we want to make sure we protect it. Do we go with the 2/3 or the 3/4 instead of the simple majority? That's a great question that has to be discussed by the body.
Right. And I'd like to address that also, Chairman, if I could. You know, there's obviously thresholds like 2/3 to call the convention and 3/4 of the state legislatures would have to adopt the amendment. 26 is 50% plus 1. But there really are some political realities here also. And it is true that perhaps 10 of the states may just simply never participate in this process until the very end when something may happen because they believe that it's for their own purposes or within their state, any convention of the states is not helpful to them. As we said, we have 33 states represented here today, which frankly I think is remarkable given the circumstances that this is the middle of the summer and no one's getting paid to do this. This is a volunteer effort. But the importance of this two-day event being successful and sustaining the effort means that probably over the course of the next couple of years, we will get to 35 or 40 states with appointed delegates actively participating. And so the rules that we're going to begin talking about this afternoon are going to be rules that probably 35 or 40 states, either through the convention method or through the submission to state legislatures, will approve. Now, Congress or the Constitution doesn't say we have to have all of the states. It's not the unanimous passage to change the Constitution. It's only 3/4 or 38 states. And if we get a reasonable set of rules that 35 or 40 states think those are reasonable, even if I don't like the amendments, then they're going to pass. And I don't think that's going to be hard to do as long as we put our shoulder to the wheel. So, Senator, you want to come forward?